Okay, since we now can add properties through the admin interface, now I want to make it possible to add them from the front end. So I want to make it possible to click this here to open up a modal window and then go through a sort of wizard where you add title, description, price per night, images and similar. So just like we created the modals for the login and the sign up, and I want to create one for the add property. So inside modals folder here in the components folder we can create one more called add property modal.tsx and set this to be a use client. Next we can import image from next image because we're going to use this. So import image from next/image. And we can import the modal parent window, or what we call the component we are reusing. Import modal from ./modal. We are in the same folder as this, so we can just say ./modal. And then we can create the class for this, or the function. So const add property modal equals create a fat arrow function like that. In here I want to initialize the use add property modal, which we have not created yet. If you remember, we have these hooks, one for the login, one for the modal. So I want one more just like this, but for the property. So you can copy everything inside use login modal, create a new file called lowercase use property modal.ts and just paste it there. If I then make this collapsed, then you can see that we don't want to call this login modal store. We want to call this for add property modal store. We can have the isOpen, the open and close function, and rename this as well to add property modal, and copy and paste. And we want to use this store here and not the login modal store. Paste. So now all of the errors are gone and we can just save and close this file because we are not going to do anything more inside this anyway. We close this login modal as well. And then we can import that here as well. So here we can say import use add property modal from app hooks use property modal. Great. So we can initialize that here by saying const add property modal equals use add property modal and a parentheses. And then we can define the content here by saying return parentheses, create the empty fragment, and then we initialize the modal there. In here I want to have the isOpen set to add property modal.isOpen, and the same with the close. So let me just say add property modal.close, which is the functionality. This is the boolean value if it is open or not. The title for this modal can be add property, and yes. Okay, you can see that this is actually missing something. Title does not exist. Sorry, let me just open up the modal tsx. This is expecting a label, not a title. Label. So like the new warning because the content is not defined. Let me just add something here so we can test. No, that's not right. Okay, so then we can save this. Okay, so then we can just say at the end here, export default, add property modal, and save. So now we can import this into the menu so that when we click this, this will be opened so that we know that everything there is working. So if I go back to the code and then locate one button here somewhere, navbar, add property button. Now we can import the modal hook we have created. So import use add property modal like that. So this comes from app hooks use property modal. So this should be add property modal. Maybe have a typo somewhere, fix it there as well, and then find this that we created. You can see here that I have a typo in the file name. It's supposed to be add property, use add property, but the file name is not correct. If you just close that and find the hooks folder, there, rename this to be use add property modal. There, the error is gone. Great. And I only want to make it possible to add property if you are logged in. If you are not logged in, I want to open up the login modal. So we can import that as well here. So import login modal. Okay, so then I can go back to add property button and continue here. So we have the function here and we have this button. And when we click this, I want to open up the modal. So we can create a function for this. Const Airbnb your home equals, and I will create a fat arrow function. And here we can just say add property modal.open. Now we get a warning now because this is not configured. Did you mean cannot find this name? Did you mean no? Fix this to lowercase, and then we need to say at the top here const add property modal equals use add property modal. So you need to initialize this, and when that is done we can create this function which missed the equal sign. So const Airbnb or home fat arrow function this, and then we say add property modal.open. So then we just need to change this a little bit so it's clickable. Then at the top here we can say on click equals, add the curly braces and say Airbnb your home. Okay, so could almost test this. User only works in client components. Okay, so this needs to be converted to client component as well. Use client. Error is gone, and if I click this now, nothing happens. But why? Add property modal. And this has imported this. Is open, add property. Maybe it's because I don't think that should matter. Okay, I forgot one thing, and that was to add this into the main file where we have the login and sign up modal as well. So let me just find layout and import it into here, and then it should work. So import add property modal, and then you can just insert it at the bottom here. So save. So now you can see it's showing there. If I click it, it's showing nice. Then you can see this is the label, and here we have the content. So that means that now this is working. I only want to show this if we are logged in. So let's handle the authentication here. So if you are not logged in, the login modal will open instead. To do this, we can first import the login modal here. So use login modal. Like that, we can have this on the top. And then we need to set up an interface here because we need to allow a property. I want to pass in the user ID from the menu since it's already available there. So interface, add property button props, curly brace. This should be a user ID. And since you might not be logged in, we need to make this optional by setting this question mark. And so this can either be a string or it can be null. So now we just need to convert this from a normal function to a React functional component by adding this as a react.fc, pass in add property button props equals, and then in this parentheses we add curly braces and pass in user ID. So now we take it from here, pass it in here. And then we can initialize the login modal by saying const login modal equals use login modal. And then in here we can just simply say if user ID, then we can show this property modal here. If not, we can say login modal dot open. As simple as that. So this will not work right now because we have not passed in the user ID. So that will be the next step. So if I just go back here, find the components, the nav bar there. Then just like we passed it in here to the user nav, we can pass it in to the property button and save. And then it should work. So for us, I am logged in. No, I'm not logged in. So if I click there now, you'll see that I see this login here. So I just logged in, as you can see here. And if I click this now, you can see that I see this add property instead of the login. Nice. So then I want to continue building this. So what I want to do first is to make it possible to choose between the categories that we have here. So let's set up the title on the first step here. So just close this, and close. And then we have the file add property modal where everything should happen. I want to define the content in a variable up here and just say content equals parentheses like that. And then in here add the fragments. Then I have h2 class name mb-6, so there's some space below the title, text to XL, choose category, and then instead of showing yo down there, we can instead say content. So if I save now, go back, you can see the title, choose category. So I want to list out the same categories that we have here, if you can see them in the background, and below have a custom button that says next. So we can use that below the title, just say custom button, pass in the label, which should be next, and on click, so when you click this, I want to call a function called set current step to 2. Okay, so we don't have this yet. This is actually just a very simple state that keeps track of which step in the create wizard we are in. So we need to import this use state from React. Import, use state. Remember these curly braces from React. Then we can say const current step. Then this is then the name of the variable. Set current step is the action you can use to change this. Use state, and this should just be 0. No, maybe default value should be 1, which is step number 1, which is this one. So if I close that now, that means that when we click this custom button, we set the current step to 2, and we go to step 2, which should be describe the place. But we come back to that very soon. Just want to show that you have the title now and the button. So nothing happens now. But if I up here, for example, say a curly brace, current step equals 1, question mark, and then the parentheses. In here we need these empty fragments, close the empty fragment, else, curly brace, p, step 2. Then we need to close this curly there. So we need to add more steps further down here when we come that far. But if I save now, click this one, you can see that we are sent to step 2. Great. So let me open this again. You can see that we are now just continuing on step 2, but if I refresh the screen, you can see that I'm sent back to step 1. I'm going to make a previous button soon. But right now, I want to make it possible to select the category. And to make it possible to select the category is very easy. I want to create a component that lists these out. So in this components folder, we create a new folder called add property, in case we want more components here. And then a new file called categories.tsx. Here I want to set up the interface because I want to be able to pass in properties, because I want to set which category we have active and similar. So interface categories props equals, and then data category, which is just a simple string, but oops, not equal sign there, and set category, which is a function, and we want to make it possible to pass in a string value to the parent, so it's easy to set the category for this wizard void. So it looks very similar to the on-click functionality that we have used. Now we can say const categories, categories react.fc, pass in the categories props equals, then here we pass in the data category and the set category. So we get these from up here. So we get the warning now. Object leader may only specify data category does not exist. Let me just finish this to see if the error goes away. Return, create an empty fragment in there and say export default categories. And yes, the errors are now gone. So it didn't make much sense why they were there. It was probably just because this was not finished. In here I want to have a grid or a flexbox with a list of categories. So we can begin by creating this HTML div class name pt3, so it has some padding at the top, cursor dash pointer because we want to make it possible to click all of the children here, pb6 because we want to have some space at the bottom of this, flex and item center so that they are on the same height, space dash x dash 12 so that we get some space between the elements in the horizontal direction. Save. Okay, so it can just be like this now, and now we can import it and add it here. So here we can say import categories. It's important that it is this one and not the other one, like that. And then if I scroll down, then I want to have this between these two elements. So categories, and I want to pass in, you can see here I get a warning because we are missing the data category and the set category. So let's say data category, we want to pass in the value of data category, which we have not created yet, and set category. So when we click an element in here, we want to call this function, which again calls the one that we have here, which is parenthesis category. So we get this string that you can see here. We get that back to this one. Now we just pass it in to set category and pass in category there again. So you can see that we get a little bit of warnings here now because we are missing these values here. You can create them so the errors will disappear. So you can have this up here, states, just so that we can have these together in a group. Const data category, set data category equals use state, and this can just be default and empty string. And the data category is the category that we have selected in the list of categories. So this is what will be sent into the database in the backend. So we are still missing this set category, and this sort of looks like one of these, but it is actually a function and not a value. So let's create it here. I just like to add these so that I have some more space to make this more readable. We can say set datas, because we are going to have more of these. Const set category equals category string. So here we are expecting a parameter called category, which is of type string, equals, and then the curly brace, and then in here is a set data category to be category. This looks a little bit weird right now, but there is a reason why I have done this, and I will come back to that later. But right now we just know that this calls this function, which again calls the set data category that comes from here, which is assigned to this value here. If I save now, go back, you'll see the ASDF, and that comes from this list in here. So this should then be converted to actually show the correct categories that we have. So which categories do we have? We have these 4 here. Let's open up the other categories file there. Sorry, categories, these ones. So I can actually copy these 4 here, go into here and paste them. So now I can see that I get a warning. Why? JS does not support attributes because it doesn't have props property. This is most likely because I have not imported image yet. So import image from next/image, and then this is gone. So if I save now, you can see that we can now select between these. Perfect. Then we just need to set the on-click functionality for these individual divs here. So here I can say on-click. So when you click this, I want to call this set category. So then add a curly brace, create a fat arrow function and say set category, and pass in beach. You can actually just have the uppercase beach, so it is the same as the label. If I just copy this now, replace the next div, and this should be villas. Do the same with the third one. This should be cabins, and the last one, which is tiny homes. Tiny homes. Nice. So nothing happens still when we click on one of these. What I want to happen is that one of these should be have a dark, the border you see at the bottom, I want that to be dark when it is active. So if I go back here where we show these class names here, if I convert this to a curly brace and a backtick, and then I end it with the backtick and a curly brace and remove the quote, then I can actually in here, after we say border white, after the hover, no, it's after this border white, then I say dollar, actually take it before here, dollar data category equals beach. So if the category's name is beach, then I want to use border gray 800. If not, we use the border white. So close that one there. So it just checks the value that we get in here. If that value is beach, then we print this class. If not, the border is white. If I click this now, nothing happens because we haven't added it to this yet, but this one has this functionality. So that means that I can copy this div, sorry, this class name. Should have done that before I replaced everyone. Villas. Do the same thing for cabins, and last but not least, the tiny homes. Tiny homes. So now all of these are working. Perfect. So now that we are able to select which category we want to create a new property in, we can continue to the next step, which should be to have this next page showing here. So if I then go back here, scroll, no, we can just close this file, close this, and close the custom button, so we only have add property modal open. Then I can copy this here, go in here, create the empty fragment, just so we only have one child for this function, and replace the title with describe your place. If I save now, you can see that if I go to next, you can see describe your place. Perfect. This isn't really step 2, it's just if the value is not step 1, then we are showing this. So we can add here, colon, current step equals 2. Then we show that one, then we need to add a new else down here, like that. So if current step is 1, then we do it, else if current step is 2, then we show this, else we show this. At the bottom here, I want one custom button for going to step 3. So just replace the value there with 3. Then above this, we can have a previous button. Previous button, set step 1 because we want to go 1 back. And we can add a new class to this as well, so that both are not red. So then we can say class name and b-2, so we have some space between these two. bg black and hover colon bg gray 800. If we save now, we can go and test this. Go here, you can see the black button with the hover effect and the next button. If I go back there, and I can go to step 3. Perfect. Just refresh so that I get back here. And then here I want one text field for setting the title or the name of your property, and I want one text field or text area for the description. So I want to keep track of these two also in the state at the top here. So we can say const data title, set data title, and I just used data title, data category, etc. because then I know what I'm going to send in to the backend. Use state, this can default just be an empty string. Const data description, this is then the long text area, set data description, use state, and this can also just default to be an empty string. So if I then scroll down again to find this step number 2, then here I can create a new div class pt3, so we get some space up to this title, padding bottom 6, that will be down to this custom button, and space -y4, which will be between the text fields. Then I can have one div for the title, so div class name, padding flex col, space -y-2, because I want to have the title on one line and the field on the next one, and then I have the space between these. Label title and input, sorry, lowercase input, go to the next line, say type text. When I have so many attributes, I like to have one attribute per line. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. The value can be set to data title, and oops, when we change this on change and we want to tell the state to change. So add the curly brace and then E for event, set data title, e.target.value. So it just sets the state whenever you type something in this field, and the value of that will be printed into the field here. Class name for this can be w-full, padding 4, also p4, so it's in all directions, border gray 600, and rounded -xl. Now we can close that, go back and see if it is working. Next, then we have the title here, great. And then we can continue with the text area, so we can copy this, paste, replace the title with description. This should be a text area and not an input field. So that means that we need to close it as like that, because you can't self-close a text area. The type is not necessary, but the value can be data description. And the onChange should set the data description and not title, of course. So if I save now, go here, you can see that we have this text field here, like that. Maybe we should set the minimum height for this, so h-200 pixels, which makes it a little bit easier to see what you are writing. Nice. So now we have 2 steps in this wizard. Before I continue, I just want to say thanks to all of my patrons. If you too want to support me, you will find a link in the description below. Step 3 will be the details, like the price per night, how many bedrooms you have, and similar. So we can just go down here. Actually, we can copy this, go down here, add it at the bottom above this one. And then in here we add the fragment like that and say step 3. Here I can just copy these 2 buttons so that I have these 2, the previous and the next, but we need to increase both of these because we're going back to step 2 or forward to step 4. Then at the top we can have the title, so we can copy this as well. Then see here, details, save, so we can check that it is working. Yes, we have the details, we have the previous button, etc. Then we can start by setting the states for this. So const data price, set data price. This is just a fixed price per night. Use state. And this can be a default to 0. And const data bedrooms, set data bedrooms equals use state, default this to 0. Just copy this because it's the same thing for the bathrooms, and we want one last one for the guests, how many guests you are allowing. Okay, so then we have the states for this. Let's scroll down, and since we're using a form here as well, let's just make a copy of this, so that we get the div that has the padding above and below and the space between each of these elements. Then we can say price per night, input type should be number, the value should be data price. And when you change this, I want to call set data price and just pass in the value. Assignment with a string is not assignable, type parameter set. Okay, how do you set this to be a number? Maybe if I can convert this to parse int, if I just convert this to be an integer. Then it looks like that is working. There are no errors. We just force convert this to be an integer. So price per night, there is an error. Receive none for the value attribute. If this is expected, cast the value to be string. Okay, yes, let's just convert this to be a string field because it will be handled on the server anyways. So if we go up here, we can default this to be empty strings, all 4 of these. So we don't have any confusions there. And then we need to do the same thing for the bedrooms. So bedrooms, data bedrooms, set data bedrooms. Great. So do the same thing for the bathrooms. Capital bathrooms, data bathrooms, set data bathrooms. And one last one for the guests. So guests, data guests, and set data guests. The title maybe can be maximum number of guests, so it's a little bit more clear. And save. Just want to refresh so the error is gone, just so that I know that everything is working. Yes, no errors or warning. Perfect. So let's then continue to the next step, which is selecting the location. This will be an interesting step. So let's copy this again, scroll down, paste. Then we can copy this fragment and the title. Close the fragment, location, and we can copy these 2 buttons. Just increase both of these. So if I go to this step now, we have the add property. Oops, maybe I went a little bit too far. No, sorry, this needs to be increased to 4. So we have 3 there and 4, which is location step. I can actually copy this div as well, because I want to have the list selector for the countries inside this here. Select country, blah blah blah. Now it should be here as step 4. Location, select. Nice. Here I actually want to use a component called select country, so we need to create this. So go back to the code, open up here, and then inside the forms, yes, because I want to reuse this one more place. So inside the forms here, we can say select country.tsx. Set this to be a use client component. I want to import select from React select. Okay, get a warning here now because this is declared but never read. Cannot find this module, so we need to install it. So let's go to the terminal, stop the server, say npm install react-select. Hopefully that's the correct name. Yes, now you can see this was installing. I just didn't have internet for the first try there, but now it is installed and it looks like this is working. So we can run again by saying npm run dev. Go back, and now this error is gone. Nice. Before I continue building this component, I want to create a hook for the country selections. So this is not a hook for a modal window, but it is a hook for listing out the countries from a different package we are going to use. But let's create a file called usecountries.ts and say import countries from world-countries. countries. Okay, so now I get a new warning, so you need to install one more package. I think this is the last one. Stop and say npm install world countries. So this is a list of countries and that has flags, the code, the label, latitude and longitude, which region it is in, and similar. So that was working. Then I just need to set up a variable, say const formatted countries, because I want to create a list of which countries we are going to use. Countries.map. So I'm going to go through this list, create a variable called country for each of the countries, and formatted countries equals, sorry, like that. And this should say value country.cca2, which is sort of a code for the country, for example NO for Norway. This also has a label country.name.common, and I think that's everything we need right now. Why are you giving me a warning? Cannot find label. But this is something I want to have here. Okay, I'm not sure why I needed this parenthesis here, but now it is working. So now I have a list of formatted countries in the values that we want. Then I can set up the hook. Whoops, you can see up here that I have a typo in the file name. Let's fix that before I continue. Use countries, close, and then use countries equals, create a fat arrow function and say const get all equals formatted countries. So we have a function called getAll which just gets this list, and we can create one for const get by value in case we want one specific country equals value, which is a string. So if we pass in, for example, NO, then we want to return this object which contains both the value and the label. Create a fat arrow function. You will probably understand more of this as soon as we start going through this. And as you can see here, now we need to set a return, but when you do this one-liner, this is actually automatically returned by JavaScript. So formatted countries.find, and we want to find item. You need to define the item as item.value equals value. So we loop through the countries. This could, for example, just be country, and country.value equals the value that we pass in here. Then we get that object. Return get all and get by value. So now we have created a function that we can use, and we return this because these methods should be available to be used on this object. Export default countries. Sorry, use countries and save. So that should be this whole file. So that means I can close this and go back to select country component and import this. Import use countries from AppHooks use countries. And then I want to set up a type. And this is almost like an interface for the properties, but a type is just we define what sort of values a typical country have. So export type, select country type. Here we need to use the equal, and this should have a label called string, and it should have a value which is also a string. So that means that every time we use a country, we will know that these two values is available on that object. And I want to set up an interface because I want to pass in a few things into this component. So select country props, not equals, value, this is optional, select country value, that should actually be the name of this one up here. And on change, so every time we change the country, then we call value, which is one of these types here, and set this to be a void. So then we can create this select country functionality, const select country, which is then the name of the component, .fc, pass in the properties, equals, and pass in the value and the on change function from up here. Then I get this warning again, but that is just probably because we have not finished this yet. Export default select country, and then here we need to return and set up these empty fragments. Okay, so now that we have everything there, we can try to import this and show it here. First we can say select country. So you get a warning now because this is missing. Okay, it was automatically imported there, so it's not missing anymore. But if you were quick, you probably saw that we were missing the on change function. So here we can set these before we continue with the component. Value should be data country, which is also something you want to send into the server. And if this is changed, then we say on change equals, and we get a value, pass this into set data country, which is not defined yet, a value as select country value. Okay, I got a lot of warnings here now, but we want to pass in the value into this state here as this, which means that when we say value as this one, we use what we defined up here, and then this component will also know that we are just passing in a label and a value. So let's scroll up now and define all of this at the top. So we have imported select country, but we can also import select country value, which means that now this error is gone. So we just need to define data country and set data country. So at the bottom here we can say const data country set data country, and this is use state, but here we want to define that this is a select country value so that the state knows what values we want to store, and just set that be an empty parenthesis. Save. So if I see here now, there are no errors, here are no errors, and it is just like it was before. So this ASDF should be visible somewhere here. Let me refresh. There we can see it was just because I hadn't refreshed, probably because I connected to the internet or similar. Okay, so now we can continue working on this select country because I want to list out all of the countries that is available. So here I want to use this select function that we imported. Select, and I want to say placeholder anywhere. We can try to save now and see if this accepts. You can see here now that we get select list anywhere, no options because we haven't provided anything. You can also set this to be is clearable so that we get an X for just Xing out the value. Options should be set to get all. Get all. Oh, fuck this. Get all. Okay, we need to import this. And this comes from the use country that we have imported up here. But you need to set here const const get all equals use countries. So then we import this function from this file here, and we provide the options to this select with the values. So if we save now and open up here, you can see all the world's country. Nice. Now we need to set the value. Value is value, so it's the value that we get up here. And when we change this, we want to pass this into this function. So on change, now we get the value to a fat arrow function. So I call the onChange function, pass in value as select country value. So then we just pass it in back there, which will then go back in here and be set ultimately up there. Save. So I can also search here now Norway, and then this list will be filtered. Awesome. And you can see the clear there, which comes from this is clearable. So now this step is also finished. Next and last step will be to select image before we are submitting this to the server. Great. So let's go back here now. We can close this and scroll down, copy one of these. Actually, you can copy with the title and probably this class here as well. So copy all of these lines, scroll down and replace there. Here we can actually just say else, because if it's not one of the steps that we have above, then this page will be showing, or this step. So here we can say image, and then copy the two buttons below this div. Previous should go back to step 4. And the next button needs to be a little bit different. For now it can just say console.log submit, and the title can also be submit. So if you save now, go through all of this. Next, and you can see image, we have the previous, and we have the submit button, which just prints out submit to the console down there. Anyways, now it's time to make it possible to add images in here. So let's add a div for this. Div class name, pass in py-4 px6, so we get some space above and on the sides. vg gray 600, and the text can be white and rounded XL. Then in here I want the lowercase input. Type should be file, and this should only accept images. So image slash star and on change. So when we change this, I want to call a function called set image. Like that. So I get a warning now because we don't have this yet. So we need to scroll up to define this. So we can scroll up and find all of these states, and then we can add it at the bottom here. First we can say const data image set data image equals use state, and this needs to be a type of file or null. So it's either a file or null, and default the value is null. And then, if you remember, we used a function called set image, which should come down here. Const set image equals, and here we want to pass in something called event, and this event is change event there, and the event that has been changed is HTML input element, like that, and then we convert this to a fat arrow function. And now that we have the event, which is we know is this type, then we know that we get an image, and we can say if event.target.files, then we know that there is a file, and event.target.files.length is greater than 0, just to be totally sure that everything is okay. And we can say const image or tmp image equals event.target.files. So we just get the first one in this list, even though there are only one. Now we can say set data image. So now we call the state, which we defined up here, and just pass in tmp image. Okay, right now nothing will actually happen when we select an image, but I want to show a little preview of the image when this is selected. So we can check if this variable has data. If you just scroll down, find step 5 with the image. Then below this div, we can say data image, and then we have checked if this is not null, then we know that it is an image. Then we just a div class name w-200 pixels, so it's not too big. Height can be maximum 150 pixels. Set this to be relative because we want to make it possible to fill out this whole div with an image. Then image fill not full, alt uploaded image, just so that they have an alternative text. Source is url.create object URL data image. So this is just something that comes built in with JavaScript that converts the URL to the image and shows it here. And we just need to specify some class names: h-full object cover, so it fills out this whole div, cover, and rounded -xl. So we can close this, fix that indentation, it doesn't have to be too in, and save. So let's try to see if this is working. So let's select the cabin, and then we can see a preview of the image we are going to upload to the server. Great. Okay, so now that we have finished this wizard, we need to set or create a function called submit, which will take all of this data and send it to the backend. So let's go back here again, and we can have this above this content here. We can have it here. Oops. Submit. So const submit form equals async, because we want this to be asynchronous so that we can do things and wait for stuff to happen. Console.log submit form. And then we can do a very quick validation here just to see that all of the fields are filled in. If data title and data description and data price, and data country, and then data image, because these are all of the required fields. And if this is okay, then we can create a new form data. New form data. This is something that is built into JavaScript, which creates an object that we can send to the backend. I think we also need to search data category, because this is also required, of course. Now we just say form data.append. Then we append the category, data category. We can copy and replace this with title, data title, the description, data description, and then the price per night, data price, and the bedrooms, data bedrooms, the bathrooms, data bathrooms, the guests, data guests, and then the country, data country dot label, and also the country code, because I want to store this in the database as well. Data country, country dot value, and last but not least the image, which is data image. Okay, so then we can use the built-in function that we have to create this. We use the API service, so we can import this, import API service, scroll down again, scroll down, find, sorry, not that far, here, and we say const response equals await API service dot post, and we want to post to API slash properties slash create slash, and we want to pass in all of the form data, and we do not need to stringify this data because it's added to the request like this. Console.log, the response is already printed in the API service, so I don't need to think about that here, but I can say if response dot success, then we can say console.log success, just to be very happy, and router, so router.push. You can see here I forgot to import and initialize the router, so I can do that before I continue here. So let's begin by importing this. Import use router from not next router but next navigation is the correct one. Then we need to initialize it here. Const router equals use router, and then I can use it down here by saying router.push, so then we just send you to the front page. And when that is done, we can say add property modal dot close. We just close that. If there are any errors, we can just show them in the console for now. Console.log, console.log error, like that. So we can save now. This will definitely not work now, because first of all I haven't filled out anything and we haven't fixed the backend. Okay, so we can start working a little bit on the backend to handle all of this. So if I find the property app, then I want to create a new file called forms.py, because I want to have a form from Django to handle all of this for us, so that we don't need to think about security and similar. So let's import modal form from Django, from Django.forms import modal form, and from .modals import property. And we set up the form by saying class property form, pass in modal form. Then we need to specify the class meta, so that you can say which model we want to use, which is the property of course, and which fields that we want to fill out. Here we want to have the title, we want the description, we want the price per night, we want the bedrooms, we want the bathrooms, we want the guests, we want the country, we want the country code, and we want the category, and we want the image. So if I open up modals.py, you can see that that was almost all of the fields. This is filled out automatically, this ID field. This needs to be set manually, and this is this is also added automatically. So we can save this now, go to api.py in the same folder, and import the form we just created. So import, from .forms import property form, and there we can say, here we are going to require that you are authenticated, so we are not going to use these two decorators, but we're going to use an API view anyways, and we want to accept post and files. I think this only uses post even though it says files, but let's have it there just so it will work. Def create property, pass in the request parameter. And then here we initialize the form by saying form, not from, but form equals property form, pass in request.post and request.files. So we pass in the post data and the files data. Then we can check if it's valid by saying if form.is valid. Then we know that everything is filled out and correct set. Property equals form.save, but we can't store it in the database yet because we have not filled out this and it will just crash. So we need to say commit equals false. Remember capital F since this is Python. Property.landlord can just be set to request.user because we know that the requested user is authenticated because that's the default one we are setting that we have. Property.save. And when that is done and everything is okay, we can say return JSON response. Success is true. And then we will be redirected to the front page. If it's not correct, then we say print error, just so that we see in the console what's wrong. Form.errors and form.non-field errors. So that's a little bit easier for us to debug. And then we can say return JSON response. And we pass in the errors like that. And say form.errors.asJSON, parentheses, to set this as a function. Just forgot to add the curly braces. Status equals 400 because something is wrong. So before we now can test this, we just need to set the URLs. And the URLs to this is then API/properties. Here we just need to say path create / API.create property name API create property and save. So if there are no errors here now, it means that it should work at the back end. So let's just refresh now to have a fresh start. Select the category villas, the title, description, price per night 500, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, maximum 10 guests. The country can be Angola. Next, then we have an image. This can be Villa 1. That one, very nice. Submit. And then nothing happened. Why did not anything happen? That's very easy to find out because I just said console log there. Darn. Remove everything and just say submit form instead. So now I just need to fill out this again. Just add some random information. 500, 5, 4, 2. Yeah, 32 guests. That sounds about correct. Villa. Open. Submit. Okay, so I now get the unauthorized. And then you can see down here that the authentication credentials were not provided. The problem with this is that if I go to the API service, the problem is here actually. We are not providing the bearer token that we need to tell the backend that we are authenticated. So we just need to fix this. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and then before we change this we need to do a couple of changes. So inside lib actions we need to create 2 new functions here, or at least 1 function. So we can say export async function get access token, because this is what we need to tell the backend that we are authenticated. And then we say let access token equals cookies dot get session access token. oops, Otkin token. This is what we set up here when we are logging in. Then we can see, is this there actually? Then we get the value. And if it's not there, then we want to make it possible to refresh the token, but we will come back to that later in this course. So we can just say return access token. Save. So then we can import this at the top here on the API service. Import get access token. Remember the curly braces. VS Code usually adds these automatically. And then when we have these on the post function, I think we also can add this on the get just so it is there. Then we can say authorization, pass in, backtick, bearer, space, very important that you have this space, pass in token. Okay, but where do token come from? It should be this one. And at the top here we can say const token equals await get access token. So this will now either be an empty string or it will actually be a token. If it is a token, you will be authorized in the backend. If it's not, you will not be authenticated. As easy as that. So then we just need to use this there as well and save. So we can try again now, just refresh, just to make sure that everything is fresh. Villas, title and description, 10 per night, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 5 guests, yes. Still in Angola, next, choose file. Anyone from Angola here, by the way. Use this image and submit. And I'm still unauthorized. Given token not valid for any type. Token not valid. Let me try to log in and log out. It might be because of this refresh functionality isn't correct. Let me just create a new user. I don't remember. Authorization header must contain 2 space delimited values. Okay, this might actually not work now because we are using this, but this is null. Okay, let's create one more copy of this. Post without token. Just remove this, and then add the comma there. And then if you open up login modal.tsx, instead of saying API service.post, we say post without token on the login and also on the sign up modal, post without token. Just want to refresh now, try to sign up again. The user is already registered. Okay, submit. Okay, so now I am logged in. Then we can try to submit a new villa. Hopefully it is working now. Choose image, submit. Okay, so now I get a 400 bed request, but that means that we are one step further. It looks like we got to the server. It's just that it didn't work. JSON parse, you cannot decode invalid start byte. That doesn't really tell me where the error is. UTF-8 can't decode. It might be a simple solution, and that is that only this without token should use this one for now. And up here, let's remove these two and save. So let's try one more time. Submit. New, no errors. I was redirected to the front page. which means that at least we got the success message from the server. Everything looks okay. If I refresh, we got the new home there. Nice. Great. So that means that now we can actually post new homes from the front page. Before I celebrate too much, I just want to do a few changes here because I want to show error messages if there are any. So I want to fix that before we continue to the next step. So let me just find the add property modal and scroll up to where we define all of the states. Then the top here or wherever you want, you can say const errors. Errors, set errors equals use state. And this is type of string array. And the array is empty at the beginning now, or default empty. And when we submit this form, you remember down here that we just showed this in the console. Instead, I want, or at least also we can say const tmp errors equals string array equals object.values response. It's just like we did on the login page. .map error any type, because it can be anything, and then curly braces, and then return error. Sorry, this was actually supposed to be colon string. And then at the bottom here is a set errors, pass in tmp errors. So the values that we got from up here are just set to that state. So now we can loop through this state and print the errors here together with the submit button. And we can loop through them by just saying curly brace errors.map, pass in error index, and create a fat arrow function like that. And now we say return, pass it in like that with the parentheses, create a div. I need to set the key here since this is unique. You can just pass in the index element, which is the iteration we are on now. Padding 5, so we have in each directions. Margin bottom 4 down to these buttons. BG Airbnb, so it's red because it's an error. Text can be white, rounded, -XL, and the opacity can be 80, so it's not too screaming red. And then in here we just print out the error. So that was it here now. We now have the possibility to create new properties and similar. Great. So that means that if I now go here, go to there, I can set this to done. Okay, actually had a few subtasks here, but yes, all of these are now done. I will come back to this again at a later point in this tutorial because I want to have a toast coming down here if there's anything, when you have posted this, and it will come down here that you have posted a new home. Okay, but that was that task. Nice. By the way, if you want to learn even more Django or Vue from me, you should check out my website codewithstein.com. The site has many premium courses and a lot of awesome blog posts. And for as little as $20 per month, you will get access to all of my content, and you will be able to track your progress, you can talk to me and similar. So go to codewithstein.com after the video and sign up. Okay, so now I want to make it possible to see the detail page of a property. So I can go back to Visual Studio Code, just close everything here, open up here, and find the correct page, close there. Then I have the properties, ID, and page.tsx. So we already have the page, but everything here is hard coded. So now I want to load all of this from the server. If I go to the backend, we have the property and the serializers. So we already have one serializer for the list, but I want one for the detail page as well. Because I want more details and I don't want to load all of that data when we go through a list of properties. So here you can say class properties detail serializer, pass in serializers.modal serializer. This also needs the class meta for configuration, and we're going to use the same model. You can copy the fields as well, because I just want to add a few more. So you have the title, but I also want the description. The price per night is correct. The image URL, but I want the bedrooms value. I want the bathrooms value. And I want the guests value. And who the landlord is. The landlord, does this have a separate serializer? No. So I need to create that because I want to get the name, I want to get the avatar and similar. So let's create that before we finish this one. So in the user account we also create serializers.py. And we can begin by importing serializers from REST framework. So from REST framework import serializers, and from .modals import user. Then we set up the user detail serializer and pass in serializers.modal serializer. Class meta for configuration. The model we're going to use is user, of course, and the fields that we want is ID, let's create a tuple ID, the name and the avatar URL. Okay, did we create the URL function there? No, we don't have that either. So I think this can be copied from the properties, this image URL. Just copy and paste it in the modals.py in the user model there. This can be called avatar URL, and we want to get the avatar here. So get the we already imported this for something else here, so then we can just leave it like this. At least this is if there is an avatar for this specific user. So if self.avatar, then we want to return this, else we can just return an empty string. So then we have the model that will return the URL for the avatar. We have the serializer that will give us the ID, the name and the avatar URL. So then we just need to import it here and use it for the landlord field. So to do that we can import the serializer we just created. So from user account.serializers import user detail serializer. And at the top here is a landlord equals user detail serializer. So read only equals true, because you don't want to be able to change this. You can also set many equals false, even though I think that might be the default value. So these are then connected and we will get an array with the ID, name and avatar. Great. So then we need to create an API endpoint for this. So let's open up here, find the property app api.py. So we can copy these here, because you should be able to visit this even if you are not authenticated. So we can just remove the authentication clauses here. Now it's a def properties detail, pass in the request parameter and the primary key, which is the UUID. And we can get this from the database by saying property equals property.objects.get, where the primary key is primary key. Now we just pass it into the serializer. Properties list serializer is not correct. It should be properties detail serializer. So you need to import this as well. And here we can just pass in the property which we just got from the database up here, and set many equals false. Then we know that we at least just get an object and not a list of one object. So return JSON response serializer.data and save. Before we can go back to the front end, we just need to add this to the urls.py, and we can have that below the create function, so path, and when we get the UUID here called primary key, pk there is the same as you have to have there. Slash, then we use API dot properties detail is what we called it, and we can set the name to be API underscore properties detailed. Save. So I think that it should be correct there now. So if I click one of these, nothing happens. Okay, so that will be the next step. When you click one of these, I want to be redirected to the detail page. So I think if I go to Visual Studio Code, I can close this. I can close the serializer and the API. This page here is the detail page. So you need to be able to get from the front page into this one. And we can do that by finding components and the properties, property list item. So when we click this here, I want to be sent to that page. So we can begin by importing a router. So import use a router from next/navigation, and then initialize it here. Const router equals use router, and then when we click this object here, let's just move these to separate lines. On click, then we can say router.push backtick slash properties slash, and then we can pass in property.id, which comes from this object there. So save now, go back here, and I click that. Then I was redirected to this page, which is right now just hard-coded. So then means that this is working, so we can continue working here to get the data from the backend. So here we can start by importing the API service. Import API service like that. And then we can get the property from the backend by saying const property equals await API service.get, and what we want to get here needs to be in backticks like that. API properties slash pass in params.id, and params.id is what we get from this here, which I'll need to change a little bit. So this needs to say async instead of that typical function call. And in here we pass in params, which is the parameter ID, which comes from this folder name there. And after this we say colon, and what we are expecting here is params colon ID, which is a string. So now these parameters here should be available to be used inside the function here. So if I save now, go back here and refresh and go to the command line, you can see here that we are actually trying to get this specific property from the server. Nice. So hopefully I can now just say property.title and save. Go back here, then you can see here first property, which is the one that I clicked on. So then I can remove this hard-coded value. And then I can start doing this down through the page. For example, here we can say property.guests. So then that should be updated, and with the bedrooms, with the bathrooms, pluralize that. So you can see these are coming from the backend. Now we can do the same thing with this body text here. Property.description. Nice. We can set the price per night, which is inside this reservation bar. Okay, let's come back to that very soon. Let's show the name of the host. Property.landlord.name. Stein is your host. Let's see if there is an avatar. Property.landlord.avatar URL. That user does not have an avatar. Okay, so but we can check here if it has. So property.landlord.avatar URL. If it has that, we can show this element. Like that, and then I think I can just pass it in there. And then I just say property.landlord.avatar URL if it is there. So that will probably not render now because we don't have anything there. So then I just need to pass everything in to here so that we can show the correct price per night as well. And in order to pass this in to the reservation bar, we need to allow a few properties there. So let's open up this reservation sidebar and configure a few things here. So here I want to set up a type for the property that we are expecting here. So export type property, and this should have the ID string. I want this to have a price per night, which is a number, and then we can come back to the rest later here. Then we need to set up which properties that we can pass in to this reservation sidebar. Right now this is an interface called reservation sidebar props, and then in here we expect a property, which is a type of property that comes from up here. Now we need to convert this to a React functional component and pass in the reservation sidebar properties, and in here we pass in the property. This property we now know that should contain a price per night, so we can put it in like that, property.price per night. So everything here is okay because this file is correct, but here we have a new error because we have not passed in the property yet. Property equals property, and the property comes from here, and we know that that also contains the correct information. So now we see $100 per night. If I go back to the front page, select this one, you can see the title, ASTFF, guests, bedrooms, $10 per night. Correct, there are no hosts for this because that user probably don't have a name, etc. So that means that now I can set this task as well to done. We will work more on this. For example, when we start working on the book property, we will pass in the user ID, we'll pass in more things like the number of guests that's available to be used in this list, etc. But that's done now. And that was it for this time. If you have any questions about today's code, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll answer as soon as I can. See you in the next video.